Thanks so much, Mr. Nix. Thanks so much for your time, and thanks so much for agreeing to speak to us.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to talk about Armenia.
Mr. Nix, we'll start with probably one of the important events in the US-Armenia relations. A couple of days ago, both sides signed, at the US State Department, they signed a strategic partnership document that increased the relations between Yerevan and Washington for the probably highest level during the history, post-Soviet history of Armenia. What's your impression from this document, and what do you expect from it?
Oh, it's an extremely important and significant turn of events, which frames bilateral relations between the United States and Armenia for years to come. Again, just extraordinary. Looking back over the years, one would wonder if something like this could ever happen, but it has. And so, again, this provides the framework for future relations. It signals Armenia's trajectory towards the West, towards both Europe and the United States. And it provides what we believe will be more economic and security improvements for Armenia. We are particularly focused on Section 4 of the Strategic Agreement, which outlines democracy building, institutional building. That's what IRI does. So we are currently working with both the executive and legislative branches to provide more responsive governance, all in line with EU standards, US standards, Western standards, and so we will continue that. But I just want to take a moment to express my appreciation. Armenia has outstanding diplomatic representation here in Washington, and Ambassador Makuts deserves a great deal of credit for putting this strategic partnership agreement in place. It is an incredible amount of work, a lot of uphill battles, but because of the relationships she has developed both at the State Department, White House, National Security Council, but also importantly in the US Congress, have been instrumental in getting to this point for the signing of the strategic partnership.
During the signing ceremony, State Secretary Antony Blinken stressed that this strategic partnership will benefit the region itself, and we know that there are many difficult issues in the region, especially in the security issues between specifically Armenia and Azerbaijan. There is border issues, there is transportation issues and other problems. What do you think, to what extent it might help Armenia in the context of secure its independence, its territorial integrity?
Well, first point is IRI survey data in Armenia indicate that the top priority for Armenians presently is security and peace and stability. Those are the key issues that are moving Armenian voters, Armenian citizens. Secondly, if you look at the data, clearly Armenian citizens view the West, that is the combined EU and the United States, as being the best opportunity to provide that type of security, stability, and peace. So the Armenian people are really looking to the West for this sense of security. The Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister have very wisely moved in that direction because they, we assess, believe that their best hope for peace and security in Armenia and in the region, quite frankly, is more westward integration.
Moscow also reacted on those developments, and the reaction from Kremlin, from Foreign Minister Lavrov, was that probably Washington will try to make Armenia follow the sanctions against the Russia. How you assess the reaction from Kremlin? What expect from this, and how it will help Armenia to secure its independence, its better foreign policy?
Well, I think it's an expression of Moscow's frustration that Russia is losing its traditional role as sort of the main partner in security, economic, and political affairs. Very clearly, they are losing that role. Countries are rethinking bilateral relations, they're rethinking their place in the world. It's almost as if we're going back in time to the 90s when the republics had become independent and are thinking about their place in the world, their relationships with other countries. So beyond Armenia, in Central Asia and other countries, people are rethinking their relationship with Moscow. And I'm sure that's increasingly frustrating to people like Mr. Lavrov, who see Russian influence in the region waning.
Given the fact that the strategic partnership document charter has been signed during the last days of the outgoing administration, there are questions whether new administration is going to following the same direction. Is there going to be continuation of the policy, considering the fact that it was signed by Biden administration? So what do you think? Will the Trump administration follow will take this document as a basis for deepening its relations with Armenia?
Well, based upon what we heard yesterday in the Senate hearing on the candidacy of Marco Rubio as Secretary of State, I would say yes, because based on what he said about the region, about westward orientation, about America projecting strength and support to its allies, but also projecting strength against our strategic enemies. And let's face it, China and Russia are basically our strategic enemies at this point. So I was very, very reassured by Senator Rubio's testimony yesterday and his attitudes towards making sure that our friends know that we're closely allied and supportive of them. And again, this projection of U.S. strength is very, very important. So yes, very much reassured that the new administration will continue this path as it relates to Armenia.
Back to democracy reforms, how you assess the capacity of Armenia to continue the reforms and bring it and be in a par with the Western standards?
Sure. Well, there are some things that RI can do to assist Armenia in its European and Western integration. And I've discussed this with the ambassador and other people in your government in Yerevan. For example, IRI has a training center in the Lithuanian parliament. We've brought a couple of Armenian delegations in the past several years to Vilnius. We are going to bring a group in the next several months. We're going to bring several groups. The focus will be hearing from the Lithuanian members of parliament, lawyers and specialists who helped develop the legislation that's required for EU integration and apply those lessons to Armenia. So our goal is to get as many Armenian members of parliament to Vilnius so that there's a full understanding of the legislation required. And it's a lot of sets of laws and statutes that have to be adopted in order to be eligible for continued integration into the EU. Secondly, we're sponsoring a group of Armenian members of parliament to go to Brussels in February. We want to do more of that. So our goal is to ensure that there is many contacts between Yerevan and Brussels in the coming year as possible. So that's one of the many roles that IRI can help to play to help Armenia on this path. And of course, as I stated earlier, our work with the executive and legislative branches about good governance, responsive governance, delivery of services, all along Western standards, Western styles, fits into the Prime Minister's and Foreign Minister's policy towards European integration. So we'll be working very hard to continue to work with the Pashinyan government on their reform agenda. And that's our main goal in Yerevan.
And according to the polls and surveys, and IRI is conducting very frequently surveys in Armenia, which are very useful, there is a certain type of lack of trust to the politicians in Armenia because the last surveys, I think, shows around 50 or 60% of the population do not trust any political powers. And of course, Pashinyan government is on the top of the most trustful political powers there. But in this context, how this strategic partnership document can increase the trust and can help Armenian society to overcome this kind of domestic political crisis also?
Well, I think that the signing of the partnership agreement is going to increase the government's standing among the people. So my expectation is the next poll we do in Armenia, that the ratings of the Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister and other people in government are going to be on the rise. Because again, this is where the Armenian people are. In our last poll, which was conducted in the fall, nearly 60% of Armenians would vote in favor in a referendum on EU membership. So that's where the Armenian people are. 84% of Armenians view the relationship between Armenia and the EU in a positive way. 64% view the relationship with Russia in a negative way. Russia used to be, in polls we'd done years ago, was in the 80 percentile. So you see a total shift in public opinion about where they see the future of the country. It's not in Moscow, it's in Brussels and Washington. The data clearly shows that. Prime Minister knows that. He's trying to take the country in that direction. So I think you're going to see increases in trust and increases in the job approval rating of this government when new data is available.
What's the benefit of this partnership agreement for the United States? And what other countries have the same level of relationship with the United States?
Well, first, to answer your second question, very few. I mean, this is a really select company. That's why it's such an outstanding achievement by the foreign minister and the Armenian ambassador here to enable Armenia to be in a position to be a signatory to this. So it signals a new relationship. The benefit of the United States is that we feel that we will have a very trusted partner in a very strategic region of the world. So it's the building blocks of a strong relationship. The way these things normally work is upon signing, then there will be working groups that will be created to work on the various sections. And those working groups are bilateral, Armenian and US. So the working groups will be meeting, discussing, and trying to advance all of the objectives that are set forth in the strategic partnership agreement. And we look forward to playing a part in that and assisting the US government in ensuring that the steps required are indeed taken in Yerevan and in Washington.
And what other states, what other countries have the same level of relationship, the same type of strategic partnership agreement?
Well,
if we can compare with Armenia. I mean.
Sure. Obviously, the EU countries all have strategic partnerships, but Georgia did enjoy that status. Given recent events, I'm not sure whether that remains. Aid has been suspended. The U.S. government has sanctioned individuals in Georgia. So again, comparatively in the region, you see Armenia described as the bright light in the Caucasus and also in the region. If you look at, at Central Asia as well, if you take that into account. So there's a lot of hope and optimism about Armenia, and I think a willingness to support the government, both in its efforts to build democratic institutions, but also Western integration, both EU and in Washington.
Is there anything you would like to add?
I just want to laud the diplomats who made this happen. Again, this is the building blocks of a really strong strategic relationship between a country in the Caucasus and the United States. So IRI will do everything we can to support the U.S. government in this initiative, but to try to play an important role in Yerevan, to try to steer this country, strengthen the ties with both Washington and with Brussels.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nix.
Thank you so much for having me.